All right. And it looks like we are live. Hello and welcome. Welcome for those of you who are joining live, and for those of you also who are watching this after the live recording. Thank you for being here for another video in my Neville Goddard lecture series. Today, I'm excited to dive into this one. This one actually came as a request from a few different people. It is a rather well-known lecture. Some of you may have heard of it. It is titled Brazen Impudence. Weird name, incredibly important topic, incredibly relevant topic. And it is certainly one that I cannot wait to dive into and dissect. For those of you who are new to the series, or maybe this is the first time watching one of my Neville lecture videos, basically what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be reading through Neville's lecture. We're going to be breaking down the important points and takeaways and highlights, so that way we have a better understanding of his teachings. Because one thing that I hear people say constantly is there's difficulty in reading Neville's work just in his writing style, the antiquated or old-fashioned way of speaking. It can be challenging to absorb and digest his materials. So it's really important that we do have this understanding, though. And I always do recommend to people, when you can, go to the source, especially in today's age where we've got AI, Neville lectures, we've got a flood of content out there. People are getting overwhelmed. People are getting confused. And it's starting to stray a bit from what he actually taught. So each video is going to be going into a different lecture. Today, again, is one of my special favorites. It's one that has incredible success stories, everything from bilocation to how manifesting his specific person, Neville's specific person. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. If you would like to read along or read the lecture in its entirety on your own time, I've left the link to the transcript in the description box, but I will be toggling back and forth between screen sharing and then, excuse me. Sorry, I thought we had a technical difficulty there. I think we're good. Sorry about that, guys. But I'll be going back and forth between screen sharing and then, just going back and forth between reading through the lecture and then breaking down the important takeaways. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Grab a pen and paper if you haven't already, if you like taking notes. Okay. So this was a lecture that he gave September 27th, 1968. And the first line is something that we need to dissect right off the bat. A new idea will not become part of your common currency of thought until it has been repeated over and over and you begin to live by it. I'm going to repeat that. A new idea will not become part of your common currency of thought until it has been repeated over and over and you begin to live by it. Now, I want to jump right in here and discuss this first sentence because, number one, there is a lot of confusion about that sentence and what Neville is meaning there, but also just the importance of it. So first and foremost, some people have taken that to mean mindlessly affirm something over and over until it sticks. And I'm not going to tell people what techniques you should and should not apply or what should or should not work for you. Everyone is going to be different. But what he's referring to here, what he's saying is a new idea or a new belief. An idea is another word for belief or assumption, is not going to become part of our autopilot until we have repeatedly come back to it over and over and we begin to live by it. So basically, this is him saying the importance of persistence is that a new belief will not begin to stick until we go there repeatedly. And this is why it is so emphasized that we want to persist and go into the end, because a lot of times we'll imagine a state, we'll imagine a scene, we'll go to that state, we'll feel it, and then an hour later or a few hours later, we fall right back into the old state. It's very much kind of a back and forth kind of a thing at first. This is normal. This is normal. And that's why we need to have patience with ourselves. We need to give ourselves grace, because a new belief is not going to become your second nature until you have repeatedly occupied that state. That's what he's trying to say there. Again, it's not about mindlessly affirming something over and over and over again. Neville actually explicitly said not to do this. I know it's become quite a common teaching, or I know it's become quite a common technique that's associated with the law of assumption. And again, I'm not here to knock it. If it works for people, great. But that's what he meant. So just to clarify, even if you do find yourself falling back into that old state, just return. Just continue to return to that new one. Continue to return to that state of the wish fulfilled, because that's how we form these new beliefs. A new belief is not going to become part of our self-concept until we repeatedly return to that state. Let's continue. You have been taught to believe that God exists outside of you, but I say you are all imagination. We make sure that God exists in us and we in him, that our eternal body is the imagination, and that is God himself. I mean every word I have just said, but it is a new thought. Until this new idea becomes a part of your thinking, every time you hear the word God, your mind will go out to something you have conceived God to be. So once again, we are very conditioned to our dominant beliefs and assumptions. So when we are introduced to these teachings that are brand new, we're going to have to continue to come back to them before we really start to have faith and we start to live by it. When I say I am speaking of the Lord Jesus Christ of the New Testament and the Jehovah of the Old. When you go to bed tonight and put your head on a pillow, you are aware of being. That awareness is God. I want to show you how to use your awareness as brazen impudence. In the 11th chapter of Luke, it is said that Jesus was praying when one of his disciples said, "Lord, teach us how to pray." At which time he gave them the Lord's Prayer. Now, the Lord's Prayer that you and I have is translated from the Latin, which does not have the imperative passive mood necessary to convey the meaning of the prayer. In its original Greek, the prayer is like brazen impudence. For the imperative passive mood is a standing order, something to be done absolutely and continuously. In other words, thy will be done becomes thy will must be being done, and thy kingdom come becomes thy kingdom must be being restored. That is not what is being taught, however, as he taught in the form of a parable, such as, which of you who has a friend would go to him at midnight and say to him, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has arrived on a journey and I have nothing to set before him." And from within he says, "Do not bother me. The door is shut and my children are in bed. I cannot rise and give you anything. Yet I tell you, although he will not rise, because he is a friend, yet because of his importunity, he will rise and give him whatever he needs." The word importunity means brazen impudence. In other words, he would not take no for an answer. All right. I'm going to break this down really quick because I know this was a lot. So he's talking about where in the Bible it shows how to use your awareness and how to apply brazen impudence, basically. In the 11th chapter of Luke, one of Jesus' disciples said, "Lord, teach us how to pray." And Neville emphasized that there was a, break in translation, basically. The Lord's Prayer, as most people are taught, is translated from the Latin. So it is missing some things that are important to note. It does not have the imperative passive mood necessary to convey the meaning of the prayer. So basically, what Neville is trying to say here is there's a lot of things lost in translation in the Bible. And in the second part, that Jesus is giving a story, but he's explaining this as a parable. Jesus' story about the friend showing up at midnight to his friend's house asking for bread, and his friend on the other side of the door says, "No, it's late. My children are asleep. Go away. I'm not giving you anything." That parable is meant to be, you are the friend asking for bread. The friend who is denying you that is your resistance, basically. It's your critical thinking mind and the back and forth that we have, and how ultimately, with that persistence, the friend was able to get the bread that he wanted. He was able to get 3 loaves of bread that he wanted. So again, Neville is explaining this story that Jesus gave in the Bible to his disciples about the friend and the loaves of bread showing up at midnight, at first being turned away over and over again. But because the friend was persistent and wouldn't take no for an answer, he finally got what he came after. He finally got his friend to give him the loaves of bread. So I know that was a lot. I hope that makes sense. Neville's basically just trying to explain here these parables that give examples to the importance of brazen impudence. Jesus was not teaching a disciple on the outside how to pray. He was telling you how to adjust your thinking so that you will not take no for an answer. In the story, the friend knew what he wanted. He assumed he had it and continued to assume he had it until his assumption took on the feeling of reality, and he got it. This is how you find God in yourself, by being persistent in your assumption. Then the story is told to show you how you should pray and not lose heart. The story goes, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor regarded man. There was a widow in that city who came constantly, asking him to vindicate her against her enemies. At first he refused. Then he said to himself, "Although I neither fear God nor regard man, yet because this woman bothers me, I will vindicate her before she wears me out." Again, we see the need for persistence in prayer. So once again, another story or example, another parable of a judge who is usually not swayed by anything, fears no one, fears no man. But this woman, this widow, came to him insistently for vindication, and eventually the judge, he succumbed to her. He said, "I will vindicate her before she wears me out." Once again, this is a parable about the importance of persistence, the importance of not taking no for an answer. Even if the 3D is showing you the opposite, even if something shows up that is not ideal, do not accept it as final. Because this has to be one of the most, if not the biggest areas where we get stuck. If the 3D reflects something opposite of what we want, we immediately go into panic mode. We immediately start to freak out, and we chalk this up as failure. No, we cannot take that approach. When you know how to pray, you will discover that everyone in the world can be used as an instrument to aid the birth of your prayer. They may be condemned in the act and pay society's price while you are saved. Yet you are the cause of their action. Here he's referring to everyone as you pushed out. When you know how to pray, or when you know, and to be clear, prayer is going to the end in imagination. And I should probably preface that. When Neville speaks of prayer, he's not talking about what we typically think of, like getting on our knees and praying to God. He's talking about going to the end in imagination, feeling yourself in that end state, and living there. That is prayer. And he's saying, when you know how to pray, when you know how to imagine and go to the end and live from that end, you're going to discover that everyone in your world is you pushed out, and they will be, basically they're going to be playing a part in the aiding of your manifestation. So everyone who has a role to play in your manifestation playing out is going to play that role. They're not going to be conscious of the fact. To the other person, it's going to seem like it was their idea, that it came to them naturally, but really they are being moved by our assumptions. That's the premise of everyone is you pushed out. So no matter what it looks like on the outside, everyone, the action of others is the first cause. The first cause being us. There is only one cause. And in your reality, that is you. Let's continue. And now he's going to go on to share the story about how he manifested his wife. And this story is wild. It's a really, really cool one. So I definitely have to share it. I will now share with you a very personal story. I tell it to illustrate a principle. Society blamed this lady for what she did, and she paid the price. But I was the cause of her misfortune. I am not going to justify my story, and if you can't take it, I'm sorry. When I first told it, one lady was very upset, and I regret that. But I have noticed that when someone has recently given up alcohol, tobacco, meat, or sex, they invariably condemn the state. And true. They feel too close to it to feel secure. I'm not saying this lady had a similar experience or she was the victim. I'm only speaking of a principle. Now here is my story. When I decided to marry the lady who now bears my name, I applied this principle. At the time, I was terribly involved. I had married at the age of 18 and became a father at 19. We separated that year, but I never sought a divorce. Therefore, my separation was not legal in the state of New York. 16 years later, when I fell in love and wanted to marry my present wife, I decided to sleep as though we were married. While sleeping physically in my hotel room, I slept imaginatively in an apartment, she in one bed and I in another. My dancing partner did not want me to marry, so she told my wife that I would be seeking a divorce and to make herself scarce, which she did, taking up residence in another state. But I persisted. Night after night, I slept in the assumption that I was happily married to the girl I love. Within a week, I received a call requesting me to be in court the next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Giving me no reason why I should be there, I dismissed the request, thinking it was a hoax played on me by a friend. So the next Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m., I was unshaved and only casually dressed when the phone rang and a lady said, "It would be to your advantage as a public figure to be in court this morning as your wife is on trial." What a shock! I quickly thanked the lady, caught a taxi, and arrived just as court began. My wife had been caught lifting a few items from a store in New York City, which she had not paid for. Asking to speak on her behalf, I said, "She is my wife and the mother of my son. Although we have been separated for 16 years, as far as I know, she has never done this before, and I do not think she will ever do it again. We have a marvelous son. Please do nothing to her to reflect in any way upon our son, who lives with me. Oh, Neville. If I must say something, she is 8 years my senior and may be passing through a certain emotional state, which prompted her to do what she did. If you must sentence her, then please suspend it. The judge then said to me, in all of my years on the bench, I have never heard an appeal like this. Your wife tells me you want a divorce, and here you could have tangible evidence for it, yet you plead for her release. He then sentenced her for 6 months and suspended the sentence. My wife waited for me at the back of the room and said, Neville, that was a decent thing to do. Give me the subpoena and I will sign it. We took a taxi together and I did that, which was not legal. I served my own subpoena and she signed it. Oh, what an incredible, incredible story. And I just want to highlight a few things there that are important to note. Number one, if this is the first time that you're hearing about Neville's story, when he manifested his second wife, it is quite the bizarre case of events that had to unfold. And this only further proves how we never know what the bridge of incidents or events is going to look like. There's no way that Neville could have conceived that this is what would happen to bring about the divorce proceedings so that he could marry the woman that he loved. The only thing that he did was he went to sleep night after night, and in his imagination, he was asleep in his apartment, and his wife was there. The rest unfolded just as it did. And it looked on the outside like it would be impossible. This woman, his first wife, clearly did not want to be separated or divorced. She made herself scarce in another state. So, as far as it looked, if we're looking at the logic and reason of it, shouldn't have been possible. So, it's an incredible story that just goes to show nothing is impossible. Whatever has to happen, people will play the role that they need to play in order for your bridge to unfold, for you to get from where you are now to ultimately where you are imagining yourself to be. No matter what. Now, who was the cause of her misfortune? She lived in another state, but came to New York City to do an act for which she was caught and tried. So I say, every being in the world will serve your purpose. So in the end, you will say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They will move under compulsion to do your will, just as my wife did. I tell this story only to illustrate a principle. You do not need to ask anyone to aid you in the answer to a prayer, for the simple reason that God is omnipotent and sorry, I always get these words mixed up. Omniscient and omnipotent. He is all-knowing, all-seeing. God doesn't need to have. God has the answers. We don't need to have the answers. We don't need to know the how. We don't ever need to know the how. He is in you as your own wonderful I amness. Everyone on the outside is your servant, your slave, ready and able to do your will. All you need to do is know what you want. Construct a scene which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Enter the scene and remain there. If your imaginal counselor, your feeling of fulfillment, agrees with that which is used to illustrate your fulfilled desire, your fantasy will become a fact. If it does not, start all over again by creating a new scene and enter it. It costs you nothing to imagine consciously. Let's break this down. This is important. This is important. So, again, emphasis on we do not need to know the how, the when, all of the ways in which things need to unfold for us, because that is ultimately left to God. God already has that plan. Every desire already comes with its ways and means of fulfillment. All you need to do is know what you want. That's it. Construct a scene, which would imply the fulfillment of your desire. Enter the scene and remain there. Now, one thing that I will say, and I'll share this again really quick. I'm not thrilled with the wording that he used here, but everyone on the outside is your servant, your slave. Not the words that I would use, but the point that he is trying to make here is that everyone is going to be moved under compulsion to aid you in what you have imagined. So other people are going to be reflecting and moving and acting and doing things in a way that lines up with what you are believing and assuming to be true. Again, emphasizing the point of everyone is you pushed out. So construct a scene, enter the scene, remain there. If your imaginal counselor or your feeling of fulfillment, I can't highlight, agrees with that which is used to illustrate your fulfilled desire, your fantasy will become a fact. This is important to highlight and note because this is where a lot of us may be having a disconnect. It's not enough to just imagine something, but then not have any kind of feeling associated with it. Not emotion per se, not necessarily an emotion, but that feeling of fulfillment or satisfaction, the feeling of it's done. If we reach that feeling, if it agrees with that, which we are imagining, it will become a fact. So basically, that's the distinguishing factor between a fantasy and a fact, is that feeling of fulfillment, the feeling of naturalness, the feeling of being real. We want to imagine to the point where it feels real for us. And once it feels real for us, we're going to feel naturally that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. So we want to continue to go there until we notice that. So Neville lays things out in pretty clear terms when it comes to the application of this. But because a lot of us, have difficulty with reading Neville, a lot of these things are overlooked. If it does not reach this feeling, if you do not reach the feeling of fulfillment, start all over again by creating a new scene and enter it. It costs you nothing to imagine consciously. That point especially. It costs nothing. It's free. And we're imagining all the time anyways, unconsciously, so why not practice using your imagination deliberately? There's nothing to lose. Literally nothing to lose. At the absolute worst, you're going to imagine something that feels lovely and it's going to feel good. And that's the worst case scenario. So why not do it? Let yourself imagine. In my own case, the scene was a bedroom of an apartment with my wife in one bed and I in the other, denoting that I was no longer living in a hotel alone. I fell asleep in that state, and within 1 week, I had necessary papers to start action on a divorce. This is what the Bible teaches. It is my textbook. Whatever you desire, believe you have it already. Believe you have already received it, and you will. Probably one of the most important lines of the entire Bible. That is the law in one sentence. When you have a desire, believe that you already have it, and you will. There's no limit to the power of belief or to the possibilities of prayer, but you must be brazenly impudent and not take no for an answer. Try it. When I say you are all imagination, I mean it. While standing here on the platform, I can, in a split second, imagine I am standing on the outside, looking at this building. Or, in another second, I can be in London and view the world from there. You say that it's hallucination? That it's all in my imagination? All right. Now let me share another experience with you. This experience is wild, by the way. This is an example of bilocation. We're going to go into it in a second. I was in New York City when I heard that my 17-year-old nephew, my sister's oldest child, was in a terminal state of cancer. I knew how she felt and wondered what I could do to comfort her, to show her that the boy she so loved was not flesh and blood, but spirit. So while in New York City, I went to my bedroom, closed the door, and lay down on my bed. Knowing that my sister lived in the old family house in Barbados, I assumed I was on the bed where I knew Billy to be, the nephew. I assumed my sister entered that room, but could not see her son, only her brother Neville. I lost myself in that assumption until my sister, Daphne, entered the room. Looking startled, she came forward, stared at me, and then she turned and left the room. When I was satisfied that I had seen her and that she had seen me and not her son, I broke the experience and returned to our living room to be with my wife and a friend who had come for cocktails. 10 days later, I received a letter from my sister in which she said, "Nev, I just can't understand it." Giving the day and the hour, which coincided with mine in New York City, she said, "I went into Billy's room and I was startled to see you there. I knew you were in New York City, yet I could not see Billy on the bed, only you. I must confess, I was a bit afraid. So I left the room, and when I returned, I could see Billy again." She could see Billy because by then I had departed. If I am all imagination, I must be where I am in imagination. When I gave the scene sensory vividness with all the tones of reality, I was seen by my sister 2,000 miles away. No, I didn't save Billy. He died. But my presence did convince my sister that her son was not flesh and blood. If her brother in New York City could appear to her in Barbados, she knew there was something that inhabits a body, which cannot go to eternal death. I tell you, there is an immortal you that cannot die. That night, I gave my sister the conviction of a reality in her son that would survive when the doctor said he was gone. Gone where? Restored to a terrestrial world like this as a young lad, to continue a journey that was set up for him in the beginning. And that is to form the image of Jesus Christ in him. When that happens, Billy will awaken as Jesus Christ, the one being who is God the Father. Absolutely incredible story. And this is another popular story. You may have heard this one before, where Neville speaks about his nephew and what he did to help his sister come to understand that death is not real, that we're not this body of flesh and blood, we are spirit. And that spirit, that eternal you, never dies. As soon as it appears we die in this state, we will find ourselves moved into another terrestrial state, just like this one, young and healthy again, and continuing the journey. Which I think is absolutely an incredible way to show this point and to highlight this point. It also shows the power of bilocation, which is essentially being in two places at once. Because he was able to imagine to the point of thorough conviction that he was laying in his nephew's bed in Barbados. When his sister walked in, she saw Neville, not her son, but Neville. And of course, she freaked out. She panicked. But this is all what he was imagining. This is all what he was experiencing in his imagination. And once he reached the point where she saw him, he came back to in New York City. He woke himself up essentially, and he went about his day. 10 days later, he got that telegram from his sister explaining what happened. His point being here is that there are no limitations. to your imagination. And when you trust that you are all imagination, then wherever you are in your imagination is where you are, actually. But we have to persist in going back to that. We have to persist in going back to that until it feels real. This part's important. Take note. Practice the art of movement. In New York City, my telephone was in the hallway and my chair in the living room. While sitting in my chair, I would assume I was at the telephone. Then I would assume I was looking into the living room. I practiced this exercise until I discovered I could move anywhere in a split second of time. Try it, and perhaps, like my sister, someone will have the strange experience of seeing you where you have not physically been. Make it fun. I do it all the time. And I want to note, this is a lot of fun. And this exercise here was one of the ones that I did personally, practicing the art of movement. That is, in imagination, in your mind, you are practicing being in certain locations, moving through certain locations. So in this example, Neville was in his house, in his living room, physically, and his telephone was in the hallway. He would imagine himself at the telephone in the hallway, and then he would move. And in his imagination, he would then look into the living room as though he was standing out in the hallway. So we want to practice this art of movement. We want to practice when we are imagining, imagine as though you are actually there. Whatever location you are at, you are in. You want to see it from that perspective when you are imagining. When we do this, we're going to come to find that you can put yourself anywhere in a split second. If you want to be in London, you want to be at, whatever, the British Library, standing outside of the British Library, you can put yourself there in your imagination right now. You can look out to the streets in front of the British Library like you are actually standing there. That's just an example. You can do this with literally anything, but practice the art of movement. And I definitely need to make a video talking about that one in more detail because that was immensely helpful for strengthening my imagination. Let's continue. A lady, thinking I was still in Barbados, where she last saw me painfully thin and weighing only 138 pounds, was hoping I was feeling better. When I instantly appeared in her living room, I was brown from the Barbados sun, wearing a gray suit, which I did not own when I left here, but purchased in New York City, when I said, "There is no time," and vanished. Well, she is accustomed to such things, so she was not afraid. This part is also so important. I urge you not to limit yourself to a little body of flesh and blood, for you are spirit. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. So one day you must take it off. And he who takes it off is immortal. He is your own wonderful human imagination, who is God, the Father of all life. When you learn to live this way, life becomes so exciting. Your days are full and you are never alone. I spend all day at home reading the Bible and meditating. I close my eyes and travel the world. It's fun and educational. It expands me. It makes me become more aware of the infinite being that I really am. Can't stress enough the importance of that. Cannot stress enough the importance of that. Like, I have to break down. I urge you not to limit yourself to a little body of flesh and blood. What Neville is saying there is stop limiting yourself based on your fears, your perceived circumstances, the obstacles, all the things that we do to keep ourselves small. We have to abandon it. And we have to learn to be bold in our imagination, because you have no limits when it comes to what you can imagine and what you can experience in your imagination. And make it fun. Make it fun. Neville spent, his days in meditation and reading the Bible. And meditation meaning like going into imagination. He closed his eyes and traveled the world. There's nothing to stop you here. So, and it's also a point that I try to stress. Don't limit yourself based on what the current 30 circumstances are showing you right now. We need to transcend that in our imagination, because the real you can transcend anything. And let's continue. Now, the two stories from scripture that I have shared with you show the importance of persistence. When you pray, do not get down on your knees and pray to an unknown God. Instead, go to bed and dare to assume you are now who you want to be. Fall asleep, assuming it is true, and you will be on the road to success, for this is how things are brought into being. Right now, imagine something lovely for another. They need never know who was the cause for their fortune, but you will. My first wife did not know I was the cause of her action. Had she thought that her act would mean my freedom and her disgrace, do you think she would have done it? She moved under compulsion, and I was the compelling force. When you realize this, you forgive everyone for everything they have ever done, because you may have been the one who was the cause of their action. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a huge pill to swallow, and I completely understand that. But when we understand the concept of everyone is you pushed out, there is no other way. There is no other way that people can act independent of you. Everyone is playing a role. Everyone is going to be moved under compulsion to act out whatever is needed for your desire to unfold. And now that said, if somebody does something terrible to us or hurts us, upsets us, we don't need to shame ourselves or guilt ourselves, because we were none the wiser. This is not at all to blame anyone or anything of that sort, to be abundantly clear. One thing that I've seen that is very much not cool is any semblance of victim blaming or victim shaming. That's not what this is. This is the understanding that other people are purely reflecting and acting under compulsion based on your beliefs and assumptions. Now, a lot of the times we are not conscious of this. We are not aware of this. So people might wind up doing something to hurt us. But when we come to understand everyone is you pushed out, you reach a point where you forgive people. You forgive everyone for everything, because, well, what was the cause of the action? If they're moved based on our assumptions and beliefs, it's the first cause. The first cause is us. Blake said, "Why stand we here trembling around calling on God for help, and not ourselves, in whom God dwells? Why call on any God when the only God dwells within you? He is not pretending, but actually became you. When you confine yourself to the little garment you wear, you are confining God, because it is He who is wearing it. When you confine yourself to the little garment you wear, you are confining God, because it's He who is wearing it." Once again, do not limit yourself. Do not limit yourself. Do not limit yourself. Do not think that because it looks impossible, or because this can't happen or that can't happen, Don't condition your desires. Do not condition what you imagine. Because when we do that, we are confining God. We're confining ourself. You do not need, and you need no intermediary between you and yourself, who is God. Don't run from this city to another in the hope of finding something better, because the one person you are going to take with you is yourself. So resolve your problems here. Do not compromise. Decide exactly what you want and assume you have it. If your world would change, determine what it would look like. Then construct a scene which would imply you are already there. If your mental construction comes close to your fulfilled desire, your little daydream will become a fact. And when it does, will it matter what others think about your principle? Having proved itself in performance, share your experience with another that they may share theirs. Keep sharing the principle, because in the end, we are all the one being who is the Lord Jesus Christ. One body, one Lord, one Spirit, one God and Father of all. Don't be ashamed to claim it. Man sees the Lord Jesus Christ as some little being on the outside, but he is in you, and when you see him, he will look just like you. I absolutely love this. Very straightforward. Do not run from this city to another in hope of finding something better. That means stop trying to fix in the 3D. Don't try to fix things in the 3D. Don't try to, if I take these actions out here, everything's going to get magically better. No, because no matter where you go physically, there you are. You're always taking with you yourself. So this is not anything that we need to try to fix in our circumstances. This is changing ourself at the end of the day. So resolve your problems here. Do not compromise. I know it can be very challenging for us to accept something that feels very bold, something that feels very far off or very impossible to get. But Neville clearly states, don't compromise. Know what you want, then construct a scene that would imply that you already have it. If your mental construction comes close to your fulfilled desire, your little daydream will become a fact. So once again, if you're able to imagine it to the point of feeling it real, feeling it believable, it will become a fact. A friend recently shared this sweet vision with me. She said, I saw a man in a white robe standing on a hill, building a canopy over the entrance to a temple. As I approached, I could see that the stripes used for the canopy were translucent green, and I remarked how radiantly beautiful they were. The man turned to look at me, and I realized it was you, Neville, and yet you were Michelangelo. Then you addressed me, saying, I have been working on this throughout eternity, and it still remains invisible to others. Taking the stripes, I wove them in the form of a basket, and you thanked me and said, great work, and I awoke. That was a beautiful dream. I've been telling the story of the resurrection throughout eternity, but it has never been put into living form. It still remains dead, like Michelangelo's Pieta, or is David made out of marble? Let David become alive in the minds of others. Give life to the Pieta, the crucified one on the mother's lap. The story is public property. Now, a dead written code awaiting life in the imagination of men. Dramatize salvation's story. Make it into a play or a television show, and let Michelangelo's Pieta become alive. I have made the story alive because I have experienced it. Michelangelo, with his tremendous know-how of the human form, created the dead forms made of marble. I came along, unable to mold a stick, to find the dead forms taking on life in me. It is my hope that one day this wonderful story will be told as it really is, against the story that we have heard for over 2,000 years. Now let us go into the silence. Absolutely incredible lecture. Absolutely incredible lecture there. What Neville's getting to here in the very last parts, like, let David become alive in the minds of others. Basically, how we animate any state, our imagination. Through our consciousness, the states become alive, they become animated. Otherwise, they exist, but they exist as a hypothetical. So he's saying, make your imaginal acts alive within you. Like, make the state alive within you. Feel into the state. That's how you bring that state to life and see it out pictured. And that is Neville's lecture, Brazen Impudence. Again, one of my absolute favorites, chock full of incredibly important points, incredible stories. And I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope you enjoy the series. I want to thank you guys for wonderful feedback from so many of you. And if you have any requests for lectures that you would like to have me read over and break down, definitely leave them in the comments below, or any questions, leave them in the comments. Much love to each and every one of you. Take care and be well. Do not accept anything that is not ideal. Don't take no for an answer. Till next time, you guys. Bye now.